earlier in my career, I worked at Google for a little while, and Larry Page said stuff like that. He's like, basically every problem ends up kind of hard and annoying. So you might as well solve a really hard problem, because you're going to like get to that moment halfway through where enthusiasm is going to wane. It's going to be like 10 PM and you're at your computer solo, like clicking on stuff, and like, you just have that kind of like moment of truth with yourself, with your team. And if what you're doing is like, you're doing like, I don't know, some slide deck presentation to consult for a company that you don't even work at on a problem you don't really care about, it's like, who cares? Like, you're just going to like phone it in at a certain point, versus like, if you think what you're doing is going to change humanity and like make a dent in some global outcome, and you think that way, and then your whole team thinks that way, like, you got to bet on missionaries over mercenaries any day. Like, if missionary being someone who's like dedicated to a cause, mercenary being someone who's like paid to attack the cause, like missionaries over mercenaries every single day, even for your own self. Like, find something that you yourself can be missionary about, for sure.
I love that advice from Larry Page, and you legitimately just took the word right out of my mouth, the missionaries. Just the idea of having people show up to solve the problem on day one, who are of the thinking that they're there because like this is their life's mission. This is something that they'll just be working on, even if it's just, them not getting paid for it. It's such a different mindset shift and framework of thinking about work, as opposed to someone who's in more of a transactional sense. Like, I just, show up, do the job, get paid. Like, missionaries are going to be there when times get tough. So I think like a product like yours is the perfect example of people who are just like in it. They believe in it so much.
You got to be obsessed. All the great entrepreneurs and their teams around them, they're obsessed, because I strongly believe that any problem that you zoom into, it fractals out. Like, if you only think about ketones, like, we're not launching a ashwagandha gummy next week. Like, that ain't we are dead set on ketones. So all of our creative energy goes into ketones. And when you're obsessed with ketones, it's like, it fractals out. You know what I mean by fractals? Like, like when you zoom in and it's still complex. And then you zoom in more and it's still complex.
Man, there's more to this.
Yeah. That inside of ketones, there's so much to do. Like, there's so much to continue pushing on every aspect of it, on like the education, on the way that we do branding and marketing, on the way that we improve our supply chain, on the way that we sponsor science. So we put 1% of our top line back into research, at least. Like, it's been more than that. It's just like, that's our lifelong commitment, is like putting money back into research. Cause there's so much, we're doing a big study on like TBI, the way that traumatic brain injury, the way that ketones interact with the brain in a healthy adult is great. That same mechanism of action of how it provides energy to your brain is really interesting if you've had a concussion or a traumatic brain injury. So there's one study going on. The overall point I was making is that inside, I get so excited talking about it, just because inside of ketones, there's so much that fractals out. And one thing I'm always looking for when I'm hiring people is this level of obsession, this level of missionary, this level of inventiveness. It doesn't have to have been on ketones. Like, I don't expect if I'm hiring someone like this week that they've already been thinking about ketones for forever. Like, that would be uncanny, I guess. Like, that'd be, but I'm looking for that level of obsession on like something in their life that they like really like get into it, that it's not a mercenary situation, that it's like that this person is truly obsessed with like their own career, obsessed with just like obsessed. I don't know. It's like a certain like spark, like you guys are obsessed with what you're doing. There's a certain like way that a person moves in the world that you can tell that they like really care about what they're doing. They care about like thoroughness, getting to the bottom of things. Like, their mind, like on the weekend, even when they're not doing the thing, they're still like thinking about the thing.
Yes. It's like this X factor that you really can't show on a resume. It's just a gut check thing that in a conversation with someone. And I think you touched upon the most important piece of advice for a founder, where it's like you need this motivational focal point that's so strong that in a day where it's like, I love what I do, but 90% of the tasks to get me to that goal, I actually don't like doing it. But my motivational focal point is so strong that it almost pulls me forward to do those tasks too. I think that's so important. Like, we've seen that firsthand. We just hired this amazing account manager who she was fully in the health and wellness space, but she had never worked a corporate type job before. And Harry and I were like, I think she has like this raw passion and desire where if we put her in this role, she would do an amazing job. And she's like a month into it and absolutely killing it and is doing a way better job than either of us could ever do in that role. So it's like, you touched on it, and I'm like, we're directly experiencing that right now with our own business too.
Yeah, it's really cool to see too, because I think you see that a lot of times with people who are maybe outside of the industry that like, I don't know, for that exact role that you're hiring, it's like, or that you're just mentioning that like someone who's done that for 30 years, maybe they have the spark, but maybe they actually have less of the spark. Maybe I don't want to like, paint with too wide of a stroke because there's a lot of people at different stages of their career in the industry. But the point is that I have found that general IQ and caring solves for so much that like just about any domain, like learning how retail stores work. And I don't know. Yeah. You got KeHE and you got UNFI. Those are the two big ones that go to like Sprouts and Whole Foods. Like I just told you that, like, I wasn't born knowing that. No one was born knowing that. If you're just like care and you ask questions and you're that type of person that gets to the bottom of things, like I would take that person. I would put my money on that person all day ahead of the like, oh, I've been doing this for 30 years and I know the name of all the distributors, this, that. It's like, well, like what? I think a team can have both, but I would say like, I think you can go a long way in life with just generally high intelligence, caring people, and that like the domains. My theory of like domains is like everything, there's only there's a finite set of logical relationships that exist in the universe. A supply chain versus like the Krebs cycle versus anything else. Like all you're doing is swapping around nouns, right? It's like you have some flowchart diagram, like A causes B or C is a component of D, E, and F. Like there's only so many logical relationships that exist in the universe. And when you go from like supply chain to biochemistry to org chart management, like it's all just the same set of logical relationships and you're swapping out nouns.
Interesting.
And so a smart person, I think, is good at taking those patterns from one area to another. And like you drop a smart, I don't know, the guy who started Vital Proteins was like a NASA rocket scientist. Yeah. Kurt. And he like, I think if you get to a certain level at NASA, I think you can figure out how grocery stores work.
Definitely.
Or like you can hire that person. I don't want to be too like arrogant on the point on like, there is something for, understanding a given vertical. But I think that as a leader, if you're good at the high level pattern matching, you can make a lot of dent in the world by just caring, asking questions, hiring industry experts, like listening to them, getting advice. I think that's like a good one is like getting advice, giving advisors who maybe have those many years of experience.
Yes.
But that like, sometimes I think the people that are full throttle on it inside of the company can be like newer. And then you have like the phone a friend. If you ever, hey, how do I get into this XYZ, how do I solve XYZ problem?